Welcome to the Voodoo Center.
Hey, everyone. Welcome to another great episode of the Sales Evangelist podcast. I'm your host, Donald Kelly, the Sales Evangelist, and I'm so excited for another great episode today. I'm so excited to be here with you, but most importantly, I'm so excited to be hustling. I love selling, and I love the topic we're going to discuss today. I kind of gave a little bit of a teaser to that last week with our episode, and I'm going to dive further into that today. And as you heard, this ain't no voodoo stuff today, but the principle of what we're going to discuss is how people sometimes make up these numbers when they do sales or forecasting or sales projection. And I have a great guest on the podcast today. His name is Robert Harper. But before we dive into the episode with him, ladies and gentlemen, I got to give some shout outs. I want to give a shout out this week to John. Thank you, John, for connecting with me. I'm excited to work with you. Also want to give a big shout out this week to Jenny, Scotty, Joel, and Missy. Hey, keep hustling out there, guys. I'm excited to connect with you. I'm excited to learn from you, and I'm excited for the great things you're accomplishing. And Kimberly, congratulations on your podcast and the great success you're seeing. I know that it's important for us to get our voices out there, and congratulations on that. And if you're out there listening, you want to connect with me, you're driving, you're going to the dentist, you're going to the doctor's office, I don't know, you're probably traveling to Mexico, wherever you're going, you're listening to this podcast. If you want to connect with us, just go ahead and go on Facebook. Search for the Sales Evangelist. That is our Facebook page. We also have a private Facebook group. That private Facebook group is for sellers, entrepreneurs, and anyone out there hustling, trying to improve their skill with selling or just being able to present value. So if you want to join that group, just go ahead and join the group, and one of the administrators will connect with you and invite you into the group. So, hey, would love to connect with you. And if you'd like to just find me on Twitter, you can find me Donald C. Kelly, or on LinkedIn, Donald C. Kelly as well. You can also just draw me an email, donald@thesalesevangelist.com. Again, donald@thesalesevangelist.com. So many different ways you can connect with me, and I'm excited to learn from you, excited to connect with you. It makes my day when I get an email or a tweet or a LinkedIn message and someone's connected and chatting and sharing some of the values that they're finding and how they're finding success. I love hearing those successes. So, hey, great things are happening. But let's go ahead and dive into this episode today as we get some great advice from Mr. Robert Harper. Take it away. Welcome to the show, Robert.
Hey, Donald, thanks so much for having me. I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Oh, man, I'm so stoked for this. I've been prepping people about this conversation on other podcast interviews and stuff, talking about the concept of voodoo selling. And I know you're the man for this topic today. Not that you're a voodoo warlord or anything like that, but I know you know exactly what we're going to hit on and how this can better help salespeople. But before we dive into the fun stuff, why don't you tell us about your coolest sales experience when you were the customer?
I love being sold by a professional salesperson. And one of the most recent times this occurred was with a salesperson. I'll just use his first name because I haven't gotten permission. Josh with Enterprise Leasing. And let me explain what happens. I own a company that has a fleet of vehicles, and we were looking to transition from our current purchased vehicles in-house to a more managed system. Talked to Enterprise Leasing, brought Enterprise Leasing in, and they visited with us. Josh was our sales rep that started the process, and he really took me through a very comfortable and complete sales funnel, asking me probing questions, finding my pain. He put together solutions to those pain points and put it into a budget system that worked for us. He made sure he asked my budget early on. He wasn't shy about doing his job. And the side effect was we took all of our fleet purchasing and maintenance into Enterprise, and I've never had a moment of buyer remorse.
Wow, perfect. And you're not the first one that has said that too, that you love to be, and Jeffrey Gitomer says people love to buy, but they don't love to be sold. And you mentioned that you like to be, when you're working with a true sales professional, you love that. You love that.
I absolutely do. I'm not being sold when I'm working with a professional because they know the goal is to find out if he's going to be able to help me or not. And if not, we move on.
Exactly. Now, one of the things, Robert, I want to hit on as well, speaking about you gave us a little bit of an insight about what you do, but why don't you go a little bit deeper and give us a better understanding of who Robert is and what are some of the things you're working on?
Donald, as you and I have talked a number of times, and as you know, I'm a serial entrepreneur. I currently own 5 companies.
Slow down.
I know. I have 4 companies that are in the Midwest that do B2B integration. So we do things like access control, CCTV, building controls. In other words, we make buildings safe and comfortable. Mm. And then I have a virtual company. That first company, by the way, is ACS. The second company is a EW, and that company provides virtual solutions to business owners. In a nutshell, what we do is help business owners get the only commodity they have that is not something they can refill, time, and get more of that time back into their lives by using tools to make their job easier and more productive. So those are our companies that I own.
Okay, very well. And this is why I felt that you were so ideal for this. And we had a previous conversation, and this came up, the idea of voodoo selling. It's a term that simply selling based on guessing and hope rather than on planning, implementing strategies. I can't get the word right today, or using metrics. But why is this such a major challenge for most entrepreneurs and salespeople when it comes to proper planning?
I think entrepreneurs and sales folks tend to be creative thinkers. I think that's in the DNA of those of us that have found this profession or the career of being an entrepreneur or salesperson. And the problem is that creative thinkers, by their very nature, it makes us less interested in the process of selling and thinking of sales as a science. And we tend to think of sales more as an art. And once you commit to the concept that sales is a science and not an art, you have to kind of become fully responsible for the effect. As long as it can be an art, it's easy to say things like, he just didn't like me. And salespeople love to use that. We just didn't click. But if you treat it as a science, there is no room in the sales process for, we just didn't hit it off. And I think salespeople don't want that responsibility sometimes. And I think as creative thinkers, it's very hard for them to think about it.
Robert, in your opinion, what happens as the repercussion from selling like that, or voodoo selling, what I call it, where you're just basically, again, you're just guessing or not using any of the scientific notions?
Wasted time. It's the worst possible scenario for any human being. You waste time trying to sell to people who can't say no to you. And that should be your first goal. If you have a scientific method, the goal should be get to know as soon as possible. I want to be clear. We want to ultimately end up with a yes. But in every scientific method, you're looking to break your theory. And as soon as you can break your theorem, it allows you to move on to the next theory. And if science was using if selling was using a scientific method, your first goal should be make sure you're talking to somebody who can say no. And if they're going to say no, do it as quickly as possible so you can stop wasting time.
So true on that. And as you start talking about this, man, it's so clear. It makes so much sense. And when I first started off selling, Robert, and I always like to confess on a podcast, one of the things that I did was I just thought because of my good skills and my good looks, man, that I'm going to be all right.
Right.
that I can woo anyone over. I could convince them. But the scientific part wasn't what I was focusing on. I wasn't trying to do that. I was just guessing. I would say, I can make $100,000 this year. And it was like my voodoo number. And I'm going to do this by doing $250,000 each year, each quarter. And that was it. That was my length, my planning. Didn't have any precise detail in that. How could sellers better gain some of those scientific concepts in their sales presentation, or entrepreneurs?
Well, of course, the first step is you just had a great point right there. You would sit down and put together your budget for the coming year on how much you're going to sell. And I assume, just like every person who does this kind of guessing, you use the common tools, a crystal ball, or you throw bones on the ground, or read an animal entrails, or a tea bag.
Don't forget about the feathers. I have the feathers too.
The feathers, right? I mean, those are the tools that everybody uses because they work so well. At the end of the day, if you're using a scientific method, it really comes down to knowing your numbers. Instead of starting with, I'm going to do $250,000 a quarter, talk about how many phone calls does it take me to make $250,000. And once you know numbers and can break those down that way, then you can stop using a crystal ball and you can focus on numbers you can actually affect. How many phone calls do I make today? How many meetings do I have this week? How many conversations do I have to have this week? How many network events do I have to attend this month? And I know those equal this.
How do you get those numbers, Robert? I mean, if you're new to sales, or you're someone who's never done that before, you just use your bones and feathers and tea bags. How do you transition into this stuff tomorrow?
You have to start it today. And the way you start today is you have to, with any scientific method, you have to start tracking. You have to today start keeping track honestly of how many phone calls I make, how many of those phone calls will get me a meeting, how many of those meetings will get me a proposal, how many of those proposals will get me a sale. If you sit down today in front of your tea leaves and make a guess, you're going to be wrong most of the time. However, if you track the things we just talked about, then 90 days from now, you're going to be able to make an accurate prediction because you're going to know the base numbers that get you there.
Oh, man. So true. I had a... Sorry, did I cut you off there, Robert?
There was one other thing I wanted to add, Donald.
Sure.
That there's no way to improve if you're using a crystal ball. You can't figure out, what do I have to tweak? What kind of split test do I have to do on myself to be able to know how I'm going to get better? And once you're tracking this information, then you can introduce a change into your process and see how it affects those numbers, just like we do split testing when we're doing online work. Mm-hmm. Every salesperson should be doing split testing, but you can't unless you know what your numbers are telling you.
There you go. I like the idea too, where you mentioned this at something similar to this at the beginning as well, of how if something is not working, you need to change. But that's how you're going to know if it's working or not, is by tracking that information, tracking that data. Are the demos that I'm doing not working properly? I realize that I'm making a lot of phone calls, I'm leaving a lot of voicemails, but I'm not getting the calls back. Is it the fact that now, understanding this data, that my voicemails are not effective enough? Can I improve on that? Can I find some resources and learn how to improve on a voicemail? And then you can test it. Split test, like you said. Today I'll leave the voicemails like this, and tomorrow I'll leave the voicemails like this, see what improved. And if you see those numbers improve, then obviously you know that something else is working. Something that you changed is working, correct?
Exactly. And I can always tell a sales professional or an entrepreneur that doesn't know their numbers, they'll try to split test every appointment. They'll leave that last appointment and say, well, I didn't get a successful sale there, so I'll change now. And that means that they never find the system that's going to function for them because they're changing every day.
So you got to put some time into it, into that effort, into that process, and then after that, truly analyze.
And you have to have a process for the actual sale itself. If you don't have a process where you know every sale, every contact, every interview, you know exactly where you are in the sales process, then again, you're expecting it to be some type of magical equation that ends up with you being successful at the end.
How does Voodoo selling affect the individual salesperson working for a large established company?
Well, I have 8 salespeople that work for one of my companies. They actually work for 3 of them, and we're all housed under the same general corporation. And if a sales, you can always tell the folks that haven't built a process or haven't built a scientific method in, because they'll use terms like verbal, feel, great connection. Those are terms that are telling you that they don't know exactly where they are in the process. And once you can convince them to move to a scientific method, then they stop using those terms. You can speak in a vocabulary that's common. Have you talked to them about their pain points? How do we solve that customer's pain? Those kind of questions can only come out of good analytics and a great process.
And I think one of the things too with that, it just sparked in my mind, when you have that discussion with that rep, or when I'm coaching somebody, you could talk to them and find that out. When they can give you a precise number, like these are their top 3 pains, and these are the commonalities I see within our other other deals that we've worked with, or whatever. The fact that they can bring out numbers and give you precise information just makes it gives me comfort that they're not in the voodoo land, and that they are really understanding, that they're really pulling analytics. And I feel that, I know that money is the lifeblood of any organization. Thus, I feel very strongly about understanding that my clients' financial as much as possible, because I know that their goal is to make money, whether that's my product or service is going to help them to reduce the expenses or help them generate more revenue. And the more you can understand the scientific part, understand the bit of accounting, nothing too complex, you'll be fine as well. You can put that in towards your metrics on and how you present information to them. And it helps to eliminate that voodoo selling on your part, as well as providing real data to a customer.
And I don't want to make it sound, I completely agree with you, Donald, but I don't want to make it sound like sales isn't magical, because I'll tell you right now, when a person gets off of the scientific method, gets out of a sales process, a magic occurs. They magically believe that they can be successful. And truth be told, they could not be further from the truth, but they magically start to buy their own stuff in their minds. Mm-hmm. I'll be talking to one of sales professionals that I work with, or my own staff, and I'll ask the following question: are you talking to the decision maker? And if the answer is no, but he has the decision maker's ear, or no, but I have to go through this process, he collects bids, and etc., they've magically convinced themselves that this is a good way to spend their time. Mm. So Voodoo worked here.
Not in a proper way, though. Not in bringing revenue for your organization.
not in a way to bring income to your own home.
No.
But it worked here because they have magically convinced themselves that what they know will not work will work this time because of something special.
It's a lot of superstition, man. We're very superstitious beings as sales professionals. And I've seen people that, it's like, if I wear this or if I do this, then I'm going to get a result. If I do this ritual today, then I'm going to see this magical result. I don't care what shirt or tie you wear. It's going to be about those. Are you presenting value? Do you understand that information? What's the metrics behind this stuff? There's always metrics behind it. So,
in Bull Durham, there's a great quote when they're standing at the mound and they say something like, "We need a live chicken." And yeah, it works just like this. If I just wear these shoes, that will make all the difference in the world. They're my lucky shoes.
You see, one of my managers in the past, when I first started off selling, Rob, he said that luck is where opportunity meets hard work. And in this case, the hard work is doing the things like you're mentioning to understand and to be prepared. And as you do that stuff, you would come across opportunities. And that's why these quote unquote lucky salespeople, the top performers, they're so quote unquote lucky. So
the worst part is we have an exception occur in our lives as a sales professional or an entrepreneur, a once in a lifetime scenario, once in a year scenario, and we will then give up the scientific method based on that one miracle that occurred. If that doesn't sound like voodoo, I give up.
That is totally voodoo. And I'm a big fan of data, like, understanding. When I first heard about this, that, the term big data and all this stuff, I was like, holy cow, this stuff is powerful. There's a story about Sears Corporation. Sears, they did some data analytics because they found out that whenever they had sales in women's shoes, I believe it was, or women underwears, then all of a sudden men's tools will go up. Like the sales revenue and tools will go up. So Sears is like, what the heck is going on? So I'm sure if somebody was doing voodoo selling, they'll be like, yes, let's just keep doing this. This is a magic. But they started looking at the data, and they started looking at cameras and so forth, and they realized that when they had sale on the underwears or shoes, whatever it was, women's shoes, that two people would come into the store and then split off. It was a husband and a wife. And then they started to see crazy, obviously it happened. That was the results of it. They tracked the data and recognized that when the woman would come and buy the shoes, they bring the husband, and he would go over in tools and go buy something. So they said, let's try to see if we can do both, a sale in both tools and also in the underwear or whatever it was. And it was crazy that was one of their best years ever in history, because they looked at the data and they analyzed it and they made decision based on that, and not just guess, not just say, let's just sell tools this day throughout the year, or let's just sell underwear this day throughout the year. They looked at data and they made decisions on data, which was able to capitalize on the revenue they brought in for the organization. It's awesome.
They even changed their brand because of this information that the softer side of Sears came out of that whole process of looking at those analytics. Walmart did something similar years ago where they wanted to run a test on being open 24/7. And could they, if they stayed open 24/7 during those evening hours, those late hours, would they make enough revenue to make sense? And when they looked at the overnight dollars, it didn't make sense. However, as they made sure that they watched their analytics properly, they realized that their revenue during the day went up, especially very early in the morning and late in the evening. And what they found was the reason revenue went up so much is because it never entered a customer's mind, is the store open? So although overnight didn't pay for itself, those peaks at 10, 11 o'clock in the evening and 5, 6 a.m. in the morning paid more than just the overnight. And that's only because they sat down and put together their analytics. And salespeople should do the exact same thing. And they're not a lot. Most of my sales team track it on a index card they keep in their pocket for the week, and then put it into their sales software at the end of the week when they're taking care of updating their customer relationship management system.
There's a tool that I use, and I love that story, by the way, and I commend your sales folks for doing that, taking notes like that, because that's one of the challenge, I think, that hinders salespeople, because I'm so darn good, I don't need to take notes, that they don't track any of that stuff, and it's a shame. One of the things that I did when I was early on in my inside sales career was I literally created an Excel document, and I tracked my phone calls. I knew my ratios, that if I did X amount of calls and I created X amount of opportunities, then the likelihood of me getting a demo would be X, and then so forth. And I would pass things off to the outside sales guys. But it made a big difference in the way that I perform. I had goals, I had strategies, and it helped me to better perform in Excel. In your world, do you have any stories per se? I know you kind of shared that about Walmart, but any individual stories or companies that you follow these metrics and saw great results? I know you probably do the stuff in your company.
Yeah, we do. And let me just give you one example. And we have not talked about this, so we're really moving off of our original concept, but it really plays in really well. We implemented a situation with an Excel sheet, actually, with a Google spreadsheet. We're a Google Apps company. Mm-hmm. We implemented a tracking system for our sales team where they could put in number of phone calls, they could put in number of meetings, number of network events, number of proposals sent, number of signed contracts, et cetera. And the effect is, from that, not only did they realize I need to do 4 proposals to get 1 contract, which was great. But what they also got to look at is my average contract is worth this much, which means that every phone call I make, even the ones that I don't get an appointment, every phone call is worth X amount of dollars.
Yes.
And when you start to translate that, the negative of rejection kind of goes away. Mm-hmm. This phone call, no matter what happens, is worth $700.
Man, that's a lot of money.
That's a lot of money. I'm going to make this call. That has a huge effect on how salespeople view rejection.
Yes.
Because it isn't about rejection now. It is about what I have to accomplish to get to the end result. And what I'll do is that we still use that form every day. All of our sales team does. I'll make a master copy of that and put it on my website for your listeners to go grab and utilize as a template.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
And I got no problem doing that. And it will help people if they'll just track those numbers. Everything at the bottom then gets calculated down to how much every phone call is worth, how much every proposal is worth, and how much every meeting or network event is worth. And that totally changes the way you see no's.
Makes so much sense. It makes so much sense. I hope a lot of people don't get mad at me with the Voodoo stuff today that we're, eradicating that stuff. So, but this stuff will help you make more money, I promise.
Now, but there's a flip side to this, though, Donald. If you're a sales manager, it's very, very important, in my opinion, that during sales meetings and one-on-ones, you don't talk about those numbers. What I mean is, you don't want to judge people based on how many phone calls they're making. If you do that, then the salespeople will start to lie on those forms.
Yeah.
And if they're lying on the forms, then there's no way you as a sales manager can help them get better.
And you're totally correct with that one too. I remember one of the companies that I did work with, there was the management team. They operated on the idea of fear. So when they did that, you might lose your job or things of that nature. Salespeople, I saw them that they fudge some of the numbers. They would, make bogus calls and say I made a call. And now the analytics was totally off because they're making all these calls but not seeing any results. So it wasn't the fact that they weren't doing it based on the principle of the matter. They were just doing it because of the fear and to appease their supervisors. So makes sense.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of, and it takes a little while with our staff. When we first hire somebody, they walk in the door with baggage. And we have to tell them over and over, you can set that down. These numbers are for you. They are not for me to judge you.
Man, that's so key. And when when people operate under someone that really cares for them and want to see them succeed, it's a whole different. It's a night and day difference, man, with the sales team's performance.
Absolutely. If you're judging them based on these numbers, or your sales meetings feel like a meeting out of, a Baldwin Brothers voice.
Always be closing.
Always be closing. If it feels like that, well, then what you're really telling them is, you're telling your sales staff, for the love of God, please lie to me. And if that's what you want, then you believe in magic. And you've convinced yourself that magic works. And as a sales manager, you have to have that scientific method also.
So true. Now, for time purposes today, Rob, I don't want to take up more all of your day. I would love to stay on chat more because I love this topic. But I have a few more questions, if that's okay.
Absolutely, my friend. I'm sorry we got off on that.
No, man, this was great. This is all line in with it. I think we got to the heart of the message. What we wanted to get across today is that voodoo selling doesn't work. There's other reasons why it doesn't work because you can't quantify that. And these are the things that you should be doing. You should be quantifying information. You provided a great tool, which we'll give to our audience. So I think that will be great. And you gave some great stories. But if there's one major takeaway you'd like listeners to walk away with, what would that one thing be, Rob?
Well, I have two, because I always believe that you should exceed your customers' expectations. So I'm going to give you two instead of one.
I like that.
First one is don't ever be afraid to ask every prospect if they have the ability and they are willing to say no if this isn't a good fit for their company. If you do that early on in the conversation, if you say simply, hey, we can't help every company. Sometimes we're not the right fit. If you feel that we can't help you, are you willing to say no so that we don't waste each other's time? Mm-hmm. And by giving that prospect the power to say no so freely, you can easily then ask them, and on the other hand, if this is a good fit, are you able to say yes? And it takes away all of the discomfort of asking a person to say yes, because you've given them first more than just the right. You've told them, please say no if it doesn't work. And it makes it so much easier to get to the yes. It also gives you an opportunity to find out if they're the real decision maker or if there's a process behind them.
And the good thing about that, too, is that it takes out all of the awkwardness when they are not the right person and they keep yanking you around. Now they know that, oh, this guy is cool. He said I can say no, so I'll say no.
Absolutely. And my second suggestion, when we introduced this at ACS, we had two effects, what I'm about to give. First, sales increased about 14% across all of our salespeople within the first 90 days we did it.
Holy cow.
It was a huge increase. And second, our sales staff spent less time chasing a person who could not say no. So here it is. Every sales meeting, have an agenda and send the agenda to your prospect at least 24 hours before the meeting. In the agenda, go over what you want to cover and leave them room to edit it for what they want to cover. And then when you're in the meeting, follow the agenda. So, in that agenda, maybe questions like, what is the budget? What is the decision process? Are you the decision maker? Those kind of questions, once they're on an agenda that the person has had in his hands for a day or two and maybe even edited, now, instead of it being an awkward situation and a surprise, everybody knows what we're going to discuss. It will keep you on task. It will keep you in a scientific method instead of voodoo. And you'll find that you'll easily get to the right questions to ask instead of, oh boy, how do I feel about asking them about budget? I never feel good about that. Well, it's on the agenda. I'm going to ask you about budget. If you didn't want me to ask you about budget, you would have said something in the agenda.
Exactly.
So when we get to budget, you know what's coming. You are going to answer.
Yes. And I just love the concept of that, man. You set the rules before you play the game. And the fact now is that individual, that they know they can also ask questions, because once they're comfortable with that, they can say, well, I need to talk to them about pricing because I don't want to go further unless I know if this is going to be way at my ballpark or whatever it might be. So you guys can set up your expectations and give ideas. And, in order for me to give you pricing, I'll need to know X, Y, Z. So you kind of work things out in that way. So I love it. Love it, man.
I highly encourage those 2 points. And if you do nothing else in a scientific method, those two ideas will help you be more reliable on what your crystal ball says.
That 14% sounds good right about now. So I think we need to listen.
Sounds good every day, my friend, every day.
Now, thank you so much for that too, man. You have a lot going on, Robert. What are some of the major or current projects you're currently working on at this point?
Well, one of our vertical markets is K through 12 education, and we currently work with 43 school districts in and around the Kansas City area. So this time of year, we start to get very busy because schools are getting ready to let out for summer break. And during that time, everybody at ACS puts on roller skates to try and get all the projects done before school starts again in early fall. So, it's not uncommon for us to have 30, 40 projects going on school districts starting this month and continuing on till almost September. So that's one of our biggest things going on right now. We also started helping companies transfer their physical phone systems to virtual phone systems recently, and that vertical market has been amazing, and it's allowed us to give companies and their staff more time and the ability to work from anywhere. It's made a huge impact in the customers we've been able to introduce that to.
That is awesome, man. Well, you guys sound like you're definitely busy, and you sound like you're doing some great things. So we're excited for that, and I know a lot of that probably attributes back to your fact that you stopped that voodoo selling stuff a long, long time ago.
By stopping that, it became much easier for us to know how we're going to grow next year.
Amen. I love that. I love it. Growth. Now, if the audience want to get in touch with you, someone listening to this episode, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you, Robert?
The best way is at my blog, my personal blog, which is www.harpermind, HARPERMIND.com. And I'll put on there a bit of a blog post about voodoo selling, and in there I'll have a link for them on this template that we use to track statistics for our sales staff.
Okay, fair enough. Let's do that. I'll make sure we link back up to that as well in our show notes. So
I'll send that to you.
Okay, awesome. Well, Robert, man, I really appreciate your time today. I love the information. This was very enjoyable. It's very fascinating, great learning, and now I need to get rid of a lot of bones and some dolls that I have.
Hey, Donald, I got to tell you, those crystal balls are always valuable on eBay.
Noted.
Yeah. So don't give up. There's still a revenue stream there, buddy.
All right. I'll keep you posted on round 2 when we talk again.
Right. Take care, my friend.
Hey, thanks.
See ya.
Told you the guy was going to bring some good stuff. I told you. Robert Harper gave us some great information. You can find all this information at where's that information? It's at our website, salesevangelist.com, episode number 135. Salesevangelist.com, episode number 135. You can find the information there. Robert actually created a blog post that's related to voodoo selling based on our discussion today, and I actually linked that in our show notes so you can get connected to that and get connected to Robert, some of the great things that he's accomplishing, some of the great things that he's doing, and just gain some advice from him. He's very, very intelligent when it comes to the idea of utilizing your metrics towards your success and to forecast appropriately. So get that information and stop the voodoo selling, man. Stuff don't work. It's not going to work. It never worked, and it's not the best way to predict or to predict your pipeline or to grow your business. So feel free to connect with Robert. And if you'd like to go ahead and leave a rating and review about our podcast, you can go to iTunes and leave that review. We would really, really appreciate that. You can just go to iTunes, search for the Sales Evangelist, and there'll be in a section where you can leave a review and ratings. It would mean so much to me if I was able to hear that you guys left a review and a rating. So thank you so much. Overall, I'm excited for you. I'm glad you're finding value in the show, and I do this because we want to help you to have success. There's a lot to go around out there for us. There are many different sellers who are listening to the show from all different walks of life. We connect, build strategic alliances in our private Facebook group. It's awesome to see people doing that. That's over at the Facebook. And you can find the Sales Evangelizers. You can connect with other sellers. I'm here for our community to be able to help us to have these bonds and to grow these relationships. I mean, there's plenty to go around out there. There's a lot of success and a lot of money. And we shouldn't have the mentality of scarcity. We should have the mentality of abundance. So keep providing value. Great things will come to you. But you also have to apply the things you learn. You must apply the things you learn. You must sharpen your tool. You must go out and apply it. And when you do, let me know. Again, my goal is that I want you to go out and do big things.